All eyes is on me. Won't tell no lies. Won't hold my tongue.
What's going on, internet? How y'all feeling? How y'all living? Hope y'all feeling, living, and looking as good as I am. Glad to be alive and live it purposefully to the limit while I'm alive. You feel me? Salute. So listen, I'm gonna get a little deep on this one. So stay with me. Just a theory, just a thought. You know, when I have these ideas, probably about 90% of them, even maybe a little bit more than that, maybe 95% of them are ideas that are like downloaded from God. I call them like God is whispering in my ear. And I just don't ignore the whispers, especially when they feel good and they're all positive. It's that intuition, that intuitiveness, that inquisitiveness, that frequency, energy, and vibration, that God body alignment. And so that's how a lot of these, like I said, about 95% of these specific topics come to be. That's why what I create is so organic. I don't really do the trending things, you know. I'm sure I could get a bigger and quicker following and what have you and things of that nature if I did that. And I won't say that I never will do that, but I just trust and know God. So when I get those whispers, I just follow that, even if it doesn't get 50,000 views or whatever the case may be, or you guys do all these comments or whatever, or follow and subscribe and all this other stuff. It's all good because I know energy doesn't lie and you can't escape it. And so the energy of everything I do comes from a purposeful place. It comes from a divine place. And like I said, I know and trust in that. So that's how I flow. So let's take me another sip to that. You know, there's a famous Albert Einstein quote about insanity. And that is doing the same things over and over and over and over and expecting or desiring different results is a form of insanity. Makes perfect sense. Very logical and very functional if you understand it and apply it. The quote unquote race that is most afflicted and suffering the most from insanity and or a form of mental illness or a mental disorder is the quote unquote black race, American black people. You know, our history, my ancestors' history, I can't say me specifically because it's more covert than overt, but it's still there. It's more mental, more spiritual than it was back in the day. But our history of oppression, coupled with our lower class and even impoverished environments, unsafe environments, where clearly we attack each other because we're so condensed in those environments, in those impoverished conditions, which is why most of us hop off the porch into nefarious endeavors as opposed to striving or having that intuition, intuitiveness, inquisitiveness that I just spoke of, to try to find a way to get themselves up out of that environment, as opposed to law breaking, things that can lead you in a box or a square mentality of casket or cell in prison. And so those components are a potent breeding ground for mental illness. There was a study that I came across. I like to watch, you know, believe it or not, some people who actually know me, they know this about me, but I like things that are thought provoking. I like to learn. I love to learn. I yearn for it more than basically anything. You know, some people see me and they say, oh, he like to get fly. He like to be handsome. He like to, you know, get on the women. And I like all of that. So I ain't gonna, don't get it twisted. I ain't gonna front. I love all of that, but that's not who I am. You know, I love to learn. I love knowledge. I yearn for it. If I wasn't doing these things that I'm doing now, don't know what I would do. I think I would go crazy, or I definitely wouldn't have a purpose for living, because I don't live to get fly and put clothes on and get at women. You know, those are just residues. That's just superficial things. Not to digress, but I seen a study that was about prison, and the study said that with just 30 days of prisoners being confined in solitary confinement has irreparable damage to their mind. Just 30 days. Now, not to insult anyone's intelligence, but irreparable means basically your mind can't even repair from the damage that it caused. 30 days, right? So I say that to equate and give y'all a mindset to understand, if 30 days can do irreparable damage in solitary confinement to a person's mental state, then what do you think years of impoverished, dangerous, oppressive environments can do to a people? See, these are the things that a lot of people know, scientists know, people within the government know, but they always try to tell black people to pull ourselves up out of bootstraps, which is impossible to do. Meaning, literally, think about the term, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That's impossible for anybody to do. You can't even do that. Now, they say get over this enslavement of our people and ancestors of the past. It's impossible, because that's 5 centuries. And I just told you, there are studies that have shown 30 days in solitary confinement in prison does irreparable damage to the human mind. Not black people mind, not just white people mind, not poor people mind, not rich people mind, humans mind. So think about the years of damage that have been done, to the degree that I'm sure a lot of the things that afflict the quote unquote black community are congenital, meaning that it comes through conception and it's a part of the DNA to a degree when we are born. So I stated that quote from Albert Einstein because just think of the cycle, the perpetual cycle that the quote unquote black people have been in. We know that the nefarious acts that we do, the hopping off the porch into gangs and street life and drugs, robbing, all these type of things, we know that those things lead to 2 outcomes: death or jail, jail or death. And we won't stop. And we know it. We don't need no one to tell us that anymore. We do the same things knowing the outcome, which clearly is a form of insanity.
OG talk.
You would think that we would try a different route at this point. And a lot of the brothers hop off into rap. I ain't calling it hip hop, because hip hop is very different. But they get into that and they try to bring the street life into the rap. And we see how that goes. Basically, every time you turn the TV on, some black guy who's labeled as a rapper is getting shot and killed or going to jail and things of that nature. Same type of stuff. Insanity, mental illness, mental disorder, crash out, perpetual state of crash out activities. And I'll close with this. The hypocrisy that America has towards us, beyond the persecution, which we clearly have been persecuted as the worst, persecuted as that it's just in our nature to do it, like there's no other symptoms. Now, I just told you the studies that say just after 30 days of solitary confinement and in prison, it does irreparable damage to the mind. But somehow, America and all these other nations say that black people are just innately like this. Dirty game, ain't it? We are innately violent. We're innately intellectually inferior. And it's so ironic that and so hypocritical that as our past is ignored, when someone from their communities and their race does similar outlandish and insane things, acts of violence, acts of stupidity, acts of intellectual inferiority, quickly the mental illness comes into effect. And then that individual from their community is ostracized and is viewed as an isolated incident, not a reflection upon the race in its totality. That's just that one mental ill person that just did this. And it's always tied to things such as video games or drugs or music or whatever the case. But somehow, some way, black people are just innately that way. What say you? Tell me your views. Let's talk about it. Now, I'm not saying this to try to excuse anything that we do to each other and how we comport and carry ourselves as citizens. I'm just talking about the truth of things. And I'm giving a full scope of it. I'm not just going to castigate and chastise anybody, especially black people, because that's the part of the community that I am entrenched in and proudly entrenched in. I don't view myself as being lesser because I'm black. I actually feel great because I know that to be hated just for my skin has to mean something divine, because I know God doesn't work that way. And plus, I also know the science behind melanin. And I know that it is basically an invaluable element. And so since I have that a part of my heaven sent instrument called this body, there's no way that it could be anything negative.
OG talk.
So I'm looking and eager to view you guys' responses to this and what your thoughts are. And I think I might put this out for Black History Month. Do with this what you will, do with it what you feel. I'll holler at y'all soon. One love.